Hello, hi. It's Bruce Coane, board certified immigration lawyer by the Texas Board of Legal Specialization, coming to you this evening from my dining room here in Houston, Texas, and talking about the executive orders issued by President Trump today. There were two orders, at least that I've been able to find, and one of them refers to border security and immigration enforcement improvements, and the other order is called Enhancing Public Safety in the Interior of the United States. Now, I was at an immigrant awards dinner coincidentally tonight, and I talked to some of my friends in the refugee communities, one from Catholic Charities and others from other places, and they indicated that there were some cutbacks in refugees coming into the United States, et cetera, et cetera. But at least from what I've seen, I haven't seen any of that yet. Perhaps it's out there. But and if it is, I will be talking about that in the next couple of days if it is. But in the meantime, I do want to talk about the two things that I did see late today, the actual executive orders from President Trump, and I have read those orders. And I'm here to provide some analysis of those orders this evening. So first is what he's called the border security and immigration enforcement improvements. And that's the order where he has directed the Homeland Security Secretary, one of his few approved cabinet appointments so far, to get right to work on the border wall. So the border wall is coming, and through his executive order, he's instructed the secretary to find ways to pay for it, look into the construction of the wall, and get started on it immediately on the southern border with Mexico. This is exclusive for the southern border. There's been no discussion about any border wall on the northern border of the United States. Also, that border security and immigration enforcement improvements talks about detaining all individuals while their removal case or deportation case is pending in court. And that's because it's very dangerous, according to the president, to have anybody who's illegally in the United States or has overstayed their visit in the United States to be allowed to be out free, roaming the streets or working at their jobs or whatever they do, while they have a case in immigration court. Now, what occurred to me is we already have laws that say an individual should be detained if they're illegal in the United States or they're out of status. But then we have a bond provision where individuals can ask for bond, just like if a person's arrested for a DUI. While their case is pending, they're allowed to remain free in the community until the case is finally resolved. And in immigration court, that final resolution is you're allowed to stay, or you need to be deported or voluntarily deported or departed from the United States. So there's nothing in this border security and immigration enforcement improvements that talk about bond. However, immigration bond is already in the regulations, and until the president says we're not going to give bond anymore, then certainly one would be entitled to bond, even though his executive order says that all persons should be detained pending the outcome of their removal case. What does that mean exactly? Some of you folks may not know unless you're my immigration lawyer friends, but cases in immigration court can take forever. I have an asylum case that I've been working on for 10 years now. And because of court delays and court resets, the case has never come up for trial yet. So these things can drag on for years, and according to the president's executive order today, a person such as my client who has been out free for the last 10 years while waiting for her very legitimate asylum case to go to trial, political asylum case, that person would have to be in jail for the next 10 years. But hopefully, his executive order doesn't mean what it says, that everybody gets detained, but instead that there's due process allowing for the procedure to get bond. Also, in the same executive order, the president said we're going to end the program of catch and release, meaning if the Border Patrol, border agents catch somebody who's in the United States illegally, they're not just going to fingerprint them, write them up, and give them a paper saying you'll be contacted for your immigration court hearing. But rather, under his executive order, the president is saying that not only are we going to catch you, fingerprint you, give you a notice about a hearing, but we're going to hold you in jail as well. So all these programs under President Obama, where there was priorities on who would be removable or deportable from the United States and where the government would spend its limited resources, are now out the window. And he's instructed the Secretary of Homeland Security to cancel the prioritization of who should be deported and instead follow his rules now, which, as we're going to get to the next executive order, is that everyone should be deported and promptly if they are out of status. Now, the second order that the president signed today is called Enhancing Public Safety in the Interior of the United States. And in particular, he says that anyone who is an overstay or someone who's out of status is a significant threat to public safety. What does that mean? So a person who's out of status, what is that? That's somebody who has legitimately come to the United States with a proper visa, but maybe they stayed longer than they were supposed to. Or maybe a student who has graduated from a university here, they had a student visa, but because of mistakes in their paperwork, maybe they have fallen out of status. Well, the president has said in this executive order that all those sorts of people, no matter what the circumstances, are deemed to be a public risk. And the president has gone on in this his second executive order to say that we will enforce the immigration laws of the United States. And he set forth the enforcement priorities. He said we're going to enforce all of the laws, but in particular, we're going to set forth our priorities on who should be deported as quickly as possible. And the priorities for removal or for deportation are aliens, and aliens are meant to be people who are in the U.S. but do not have valid immigration status. And this would be any alien who is unlawfully here, who has been charged with a crime, convicted of a crime, or might otherwise pose a risk to the United States. And in the preamble, it defines anyone who's unlawfully here or is overstayed to be a risk. So basically, anybody who's out of status is considered to be a priority for removal or deportation proceedings. Now, I'm personally not saying there's anything wrong with putting all these people in court and processing their cases. Part of the problem is that the courts have been so backed up that cases like one of my clients that's gone on for 10 years still can't get the case to trial. And many of these cases that are in deportation court or deportation proceedings, it's not to say these people will be deported, because there's something in immigration court proceedings that's called relief. And relief is what might you be entitled to. For example, if you're married to a U.S. citizen and you're in deportation court, many times you'll be able to stay in the United States, and you're really just waiting for a trial in front of a judge, the immigration judge, and waiting for that judge to decide on whether you get to stay in the United States or not. And generally speaking, as long as you have a legitimate marriage to a U.S. citizen, the judge will rule in your favor and say that the deportation is canceled and you're able to stay in the United States. And in other cases, if you have family members, you can show hardship to yourself or to a family member that might be a U.S. citizen, the judge can let you stay in the United States. Those are existing laws, and none of those laws are changing. But basically, when the president says we're going to prioritize the prosecution of these types of people in immigration court, in particular, anyone who's been convicted of any crime, and that would be possession of small amounts of marijuana, the crime of speeding on an interstate highway, or more serious crimes. But all crimes are going to be treated equal, and that means the case would be prioritized for deportation court. So even though he says we're going to prioritize the removal of anybody who's out of status in the United States, he's not taking away the due process of the court system. So it just means that in terms of priorities and setting a court calendar, anyone who's certainly been charged with a crime or has been convicted of a crime under the Trump order will move to the top of the list to have their case set sooner than others. And in many cases, there are waivers for people that have committed a crime, so they may still be able to stay here, but their cases will move more quickly. Of course, that doesn't bode well for people that have obvious relief but have to go through the immigration court. So for people who are married to U.S. citizens or people who are victims of domestic abuse who would be able to stay in the United States once the judge rules on their case, those people are going to the back of the line and will have to wait perhaps many years till they ever get to have their trial, while other people with traffic tickets, marijuana possession, things like that, they're going to get to have their trials more quickly. Lastly, in today's order concerning internal enforcement, the president has basically said, we're sick of the sanctuary cities, sick of the people that are government officials in certain cities, well, many, probably hundreds of cities, around the United States that don't want to cooperate with the federal government in deporting people. And the president has said, we're going to enforce the laws. And there are laws already on the books that say that when the federal government requests information about people's immigration status, that the government must go ahead, these local governments must go ahead and provide that information according to federal law. And the president says we're going to enforce this. Now, he doesn't say exactly what's going to happen, although in his executive order he does say that he wants the Secretary of Homeland Security and other cabinet members to look into ways to penalize and withhold federal funding from cities that refuse to cooperate and turn in their residents to the federal government when the federal government is requesting it. So these were the orders today. There have been a lot of rumors, and I've seen a lot of articles, including in the New York Times, where they've talked about the possibility of the end of the DACA program. That's the so-called DREAM Act for individuals who came here at a young age, and it's known as DACA, It's a deferred action program for childhood arrivals in the United States. And that's the executive order from President Obama that said if you came here at a young age and you've gone to school here and you're under a certain age, you're still in your 20s or teenager, that you'll be able to stay in the United States and get a work permit. So for the last several years, individuals who came here as young children have been able to get work permits and stay here while the Congress considers, but still has never passed, a DREAM Act for these people. Well, the rumors have been flying, and apparently things have been said in Washington that indicate that President Trump is going to cancel President Obama's executive order allowing this. And there's thought to be about 700,000 individuals who came to the United States as youths who've benefited from this program. And if the president cancels that order altogether, that means these folks that do have their work permits would no longer be quasi-legal. I mean, right now they're quasi-legal, meaning semi-legal in the United States, and they're authorized to work in the United States, which then allows them in most places to get a driver's license. But the rumor is that that may be one of the next executive orders coming down the pike, possibly as soon as tomorrow, where President Trump takes action on President Obama's executive order dealing with DACA or the DREAM Act for individuals who came here at a young age. So hopefully that won't happen, because I actually have a number of clients who have benefited from DACA or the DREAM Act and have been able to work in the United States. Some of them are my Facebook friends who might be watching tonight and are quite worried about what might happen to their status. And from the look of what the president's been doing, it's going to be sooner rather than later, perhaps as soon as tomorrow. So stay tuned, as I will continue to talk about what these actions mean. I've read both executive orders from start to finish, and so these are the highlights of what I see in the 2 executive orders that the President signed today. Thanks for watching.